If you're over 70, there are patterns I've been noticing for years now. Patterns that separate the people who seem content and connected from those who feel increasingly isolated and unhappy. I'm not talking about wealth or perfect health. I'm talking about something more subtle than that. It's about the small daily choices that compound over time, the habits that either keep you engaged with life or gradually pull you away from it. Most people don't see these patterns because no one's ever explained what to look for. But once you understand them, you start to see them everywhere. My name is Harold Bennett, and I've spent decades watching how people age. I'm not a doctor or a psychologist. I'm someone who's paid attention to neighbors, to family members, to the people I've worked with over the years. And what I've learned is that happiness after 70 isn't random. It follows certain patterns. The people who maintain their joy and purpose into their later years tend to do specific things differently than those who don't. Today, I want to share those patterns with you. This matters more than you might think. Because the decisions you make today, the small ones, the ones that seem insignificant, they're shaping what your life will look like 5 years from now, 10 years from now. And the good news is that it's never too late to make adjustments. I've seen people make meaningful changes in their mid-70s, even their 80s, and experience real improvement in their quality of life. So I'd like you to listen carefully to what I'm going to share. If you find this helpful, consider subscribing to this channel. I make these videos because I believe this information matters, and I want to reach people who can benefit from it. But more importantly, I want you to think about your own life as we go through this together. See if you recognize yourself in any of these patterns. The first thing I've noticed about happy seniors is that they maintain regular contact with people outside their immediate family, not just phone calls on holidays. I'm talking about genuine, ongoing relationships with friends, neighbors, former colleagues. And here's what makes this so important. It gives them a sense of identity beyond their family roles. They're not just someone's parent or grandparent. They're themselves. Let me tell you about 2 women I know, both 74. Margaret and Helen. Margaret calls her daughter every day, sometimes twice a day. She waits for those calls the way some people wait for meals. Her daughter is devoted, visits weekly, but Margaret's entire emotional state depends on that relationship. If her daughter seems busy or distracted, Margaret feels it for days. Helen, on the other hand, talks to her children regularly, but she also has lunch with 2 friends every Thursday. She volunteers at the library on Tuesdays. She knows the people at her grocery store by name and stops to chat. When her son can't make it for Sunday dinner, she's disappointed, but her week doesn't collapse. She has other sources of connection, other reasons to get dressed and leave the house. The difference between these 2 women isn't that one loves her family more. It's that Helen has maintained multiple threads of connection in her life, and Margaret has let hers narrow down to just 1 or 2. What happens over time is that Margaret becomes more dependent, more anxious, more focused on the people she does have contact with. Helen remains more independent, more confident, more engaged with the world. This isn't about being popular or having a busy social calendar. It's about having enough connections that you still feel like yourself, not just someone's relative, but a person with your own relationships and your own place in the community. Studies have shown that social isolation affects health as much as smoking does. But beyond the health implications, I've watched what it does to people's spirits. The ones who maintain those outside connections just seem more alive. If you're finding this is making sense so far, I hope you'll stay with me. There's more I want to share with you. The second pattern I've observed is that happy seniors have at least one activity that's theirs alone, something they do because they enjoy it, not because it's useful or productive. This might sound trivial, but it's not. I'm talking about people who still paint, or read mystery novels, or work on their model trains, or tend to their roses. Something that gives them pleasure for its own sake. I knew 2 men, both retired from the same company. Joe and Frank, both 77. Joe spent his retirement doing things he felt he should do. He helped his son-in-law with projects around the house. He ran errands for his wife. He watched a lot of television because there wasn't much else to do. When you asked Joe how he was, he'd say fine, but there wasn't much light in his eyes. Frank, meanwhile, joined a woodworking group at the community center. Twice a week, he'd go there and work on furniture projects. He made a bookshelf for his granddaughter, a jewelry box for his wife. But mostly, he made things because he enjoyed the process. The smell of the wood, the precision of the cuts, the satisfaction of seeing something take shape under his hands. What I noticed was that Frank had a sense of anticipation in his life. He looked forward to Tuesdays and Thursdays. He had something to talk about besides doctor appointments and what was on TV. Joe, for all his helpfulness, seemed to be filling time rather than enjoying it. And over the years, that difference became more and more apparent. Frank stayed engaged, curious, interested. Joe became quieter, more withdrawn, more passive. The activity itself doesn't matter much. It could be gardening or genealogy research or learning to play the harmonica. What matters is that it's something you do for yourself, something that brings you genuine pleasure. Not duty, not obligation, not usefulness. Pleasure. Because when you have something in your life that you look forward to, that you do purely because you want to, it changes how you experience your days. You're not just passing time, you're living. The third thing I've seen in happy seniors is that they've learned to accept help without feeling diminished by it. This is harder than it sounds. Many people your age grew up believing that needing help meant you were weak or failing. But the people who age will have figured out that accepting appropriate help is actually what allows them to maintain their independence longer. Think about two sisters I know, both in their early 70s. Carol and Nancy. Carol refuses help with anything. When her arthritis makes it hard to open jars, she struggles with them for 10 minutes rather than ask someone. When her knees started bothering her on the stairs, she kept using them the same way, multiple times a day, because she wasn't going to let age slow her down. When people offer to help her carry groceries, she waves them off. She's determined to do everything herself. Nancy, meanwhile, asked her son to install grab bars in her bathroom when she noticed her balance wasn't quite what it used to be. She hired a teenager from the neighborhood to help with yard work that involved a lot of bending. She joined a grocery delivery service for her heavy items. And here's what happened. Carol's independence has actually decreased. She's had a couple of falls. She's developed a fear of certain activities. She's limited her world to avoid situations where she might need help. Nancy, on the other hand, is still living fully in her own home, still active, still confident, because she accepted small helps that allowed her to avoid big problems. The people who understand this aren't giving up their independence. They're protecting it. They're making strategic decisions about where to conserve their energy and where to accept support. They've learned that there's a difference between being helpless and being practical. Research shows that seniors who accept appropriate assistance actually maintain their autonomy longer than those who refuse all help. But beyond the research, I've just watched it happen again and again. The ones who are too proud to accept help end up needing much more help than they would have otherwise. This is about wisdom, not weakness. It's about knowing yourself well enough to make good decisions about your own life. The fourth pattern involves how people spend their mornings. Happy seniors have some kind of structure to their early day, not rigid scheduling, but a sense of purpose and routine. They don't stay in bed until they feel like getting up. They have a reason to rise, something that pulls them into the day. I've known two widowers, both 79, Robert and Walter. Robert lost his wife 3 years ago, and his mornings became shapeless after that. No one waiting for breakfast, no schedule to keep. So he started sleeping later, sometimes until 9 or 10. He'd have coffee in his robe, watch the morning shows, gradually ease into the day. There wasn't anything particularly wrong with this, but over time, I noticed he seemed more lethargic, more disconnected, less motivated to do much of anything. Walter lost his wife around the same time, but Walter kept getting up at 6:30, the same time he'd gotten up for 40 years. He'd make his coffee, read the paper, eat a proper breakfast. Then he'd get dressed, not fancy, but dressed, and he'd do whatever he planned for the day. Visit the hardware store, work in his garden, meet a friend for coffee. The structure of his morning seemed to pull him forward into the rest of his day. What I realized watching these two men was that the morning sets the tone for everything that follows. When you rise with some sense of purpose, even if that purpose is just having breakfast at a regular time, you're telling yourself that the day matters. You're participating in life rather than letting life happen around you. Doctors have found that maintaining regular sleep schedules helps with everything from mood to cognitive function. But what I've observed is something simpler. The people who have morning routines just seem more engaged with their lives. This doesn't mean you need to be up at dawn or have every hour planned. It just means having some reason to get up, some small structure that says today is worth being awake for. Maybe it's reading the paper with coffee. Maybe it's a walk around the neighborhood. Maybe it's calling a friend at a regular time. The specific activity matters less than the sense that your day has a beginning, and that beginning is something you're choosing. I hope this is making sense to you. If you're seeing yourself in any of these patterns, that's good. It means you're paying attention. The fifth thing I've noticed is that happy seniors have made peace with doing things more slowly. They're not in denial about their pace. They're not frustrated by it. They've adjusted their expectations and their schedules to match their actual capabilities, and this has given them a kind of peace that people who are fighting their limitations don't have. I know two women who garden, both 76, Eleanor and Barbara. Eleanor used to maintain a large vegetable garden for raised beds, dozens of tomato plants, beans, peppers, zucchini. As her energy decreased and her back started bothering her, she kept trying to maintain the same garden. She'd be out there in the heat, pushing herself, getting frustrated when she couldn't keep up with the weeding, annoyed when the harvest overwhelmed her. The garden, which used to bring her joy, became a source of stress and disappointment. Barbara had a similar garden, but when she noticed she couldn't maintain it the way she used to, she scaled back. She went from 4 beds to 2. She focused on the plants she enjoyed most, tomatoes and herbs, and let go of the rest. She worked in the cooler parts of the day and took breaks when she needed them. She wasn't trying to prove anything. She was simply adjusting to reality. And what happened was that she kept enjoying her garden while Eleanor increasingly resented hers. This is about something deeper than gardening. It's about the ability to adapt to change without seeing that adaptation as defeat. The people who age happily aren't the ones who maintain their 70-year-old pace at 80. They're the ones who find contentment at their 80-year-old pace. They've learned that doing less, done with presence and enjoyment, is better than doing more with frustration and exhaustion. Studies show that people who can adapt their self-expectations to match their capabilities report higher life satisfaction than those who maintain rigid standards. But I've seen this play out in ways that go beyond satisfaction. The people who can slow down without shame just seem more at peace with themselves. They're not constantly fighting reality. They're working with it. The sixth pattern is about staying curious. Happy seniors ask questions. They're interested in things. They haven't reached a point where they think they know everything they need to know. This keeps their minds active, but more than that, it keeps them engaged with other people and with the world around them. Think about 2 men I've known, both 81, George and Raymond. George has settled into a comfortable certainty about most things. He knows what he thinks about politics, about the neighborhood, about how things should be done. When his grandson talks about his work in computers, George nods politely, but doesn't really ask about it. When someone mentions a book or a movie, George says whether he'd be interested or not, but he doesn't inquire further. He's pleasant enough, but there's a kind of closed quality to his conversations. Raymond, on the other hand, asks about everything. What kind of work do you do? How does that work? What made you interested in that? When his granddaughter talks about her job teaching, he wants to know what the kids are like these days, what she's teaching them, what's changed since he was in school. He reads articles about things he doesn't understand just to learn something new. His curiosity makes him interesting to talk to, and it makes other people want to spend time with him. What I've observed is that curiosity creates connection. When you ask genuine questions, people respond. They open up. They engage. And that engagement feeds back into your own sense of vitality and purpose. The people who stop being curious tend to have more and more superficial conversations. The people who maintain their curiosity have deeper, more meaningful exchanges that leave them feeling more connected to the people around them. Research has shown that intellectual curiosity is associated with better cognitive health in older adults. But what I've noticed is that it also affects happiness in a direct way. Curious people are interested in their own lives. They're paying attention. They're not just waiting for time to pass. And that makes all the difference. The last thing I want to talk about is gratitude. Not the kind where you force yourself to count blessings. I'm talking about the genuine ability to notice and appreciate the good things in your daily life, even small ones. Happy seniors have developed this capacity, and it changes the quality of their days. I've known 2 neighbors, both 73, Donald and Arthur. Donald focuses on what's wrong. His knee hurts, the weather's too hot, the grocery store was crowded, his daughter didn't call when she said she would. These things are all true, but they're not the only truth. When you talk to Donald, you come away feeling tired because everything in his life is presented as a burden or a disappointment. Arthur has plenty of problems too. His health isn't perfect. He's had his share of losses. His life isn't what he might have hoped for. But when you ask Arthur how he's doing, he'll mention that he had a good cup of coffee this morning, or that he saw a cardinal in his yard, or that his neighbor brought over some tomatoes from her garden. He notices the good things. He mentions them. He lets them register. The difference between these two men isn't their circumstances. It's their attention. Donald's attention is constantly drawn to what's wrong or disappointing. Arthur's attention includes those things, but it also includes what's pleasant or beautiful or kind. And over time, this difference in attention creates a difference in experience. Donald feels like life is declining. Arthur feels like life still has good moments worth savoring. This isn't about denial or forced positivity. It's about balanced attention. Studies have found that practicing gratitude improves mental health, sleep quality, and even physical health markers in older adults. But what I've seen is simpler than that. The people who can notice good things just enjoy their lives more. They're not waiting for something big to happen. They're appreciating what's already here. Let me bring this together for you. What I've shared today isn't about making dramatic changes or completely restructuring your life. It's about paying attention to patterns that make a difference, maintaining connections beyond your immediate family, having something you do for pleasure, accepting help strategically, creating morning structure, adapting your pace, staying curious, and noticing what's good. These aren't rigid rules. They're observations about what seems to work, what seems to help people maintain their happiness and sense of purpose as they age. And the beautiful thing is that all of these are adjustable at any point. You can make changes today that will affect how you experience tomorrow. I want you to think about your own life. Which of these patterns do you already have? Which ones might you want to develop? You don't need to change everything at once. Pick one thing. Maybe it's reaching out to an old friend you haven't talked to in a while. Maybe it's starting a small project that interests you. Maybe it's just noticing one good thing before you go to bed tonight. The people who age happily aren't necessarily the healthiest or the wealthiest or the luckiest. They're the ones who've figured out how to live well within whatever circumstances they have. And that's available to you too. It really is. You just have to be willing to pay attention and make small adjustments. If this conversation helped you, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. And if you know someone who might benefit from hearing this, please share it with them. I make these videos because I believe this information matters and because I've seen what a difference it can make when people understand these patterns. Thank you for listening. Take care of yourself.